day. Welcome to the Prairie Weekly, a public affairs presentation of Prairie Public Radio. Today on the Prairie Weekly, we're going to be talking about the aftermath of the 1990 elections, what went right and what went wrong. And our guest today from the Republican Party, the Executive Director Kevin Kramer, and Eric Kautzman, the Executive Director of the North Dakota Democratic NPL Party. Also questioning them will be Tim Roby of the Fargo Forum. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hello, David.
And of course, I've got some of the things that happened in the election in front of me. We'll just go down that very briefly. Congressman Byron Dorgan, a Democrat, won his sixth term in Congress. He received about 65% of the vote. His challenger, Republican Ed Schaefer, received about 35% of the vote. For State Labor Commissioner, a no-party office, Republican Craig Hagan won. He received approximately 60% of the vote. His challenger, Democrat S.F. Buckshot Hoffner, received 40%. For Public Service Commissioner, Republican incumbent Dale Sandstrom won a second full six-year term to the PSC. He received about 63 to 64% of the vote. His challenger, State Senator Floyd Strummy of Devils Lake, received about 36% of the vote. The House went to the Republicans by 58 to 48, and right now as we speak today, the Senate is an even split, 26 Democrats, 26 Republicans, and that means a special election in District 20, December 20th, is going to determine who controls the state Senate. Now, I'd like to start with our executive directors, and maybe we'll start with Kevin Kramer from the Republican Party. What went right for the Republicans in this election?
Well, a couple of things went right. Actually, a number of things. The fact that we were able to re-elect Dale Sandstrom with a very, very large margin, of course, was helpful. Dale's always been a very strong vote getter, and of course was really the leader on our ticket, having been one of the survivors of the tough 1984 campaign. So we were very happy to have Dale reelected with a large margin. And of course, the real statewide victory for us was winning the Labor Commissioner seat back. It had only gone to a Democrat once, and that is the current commissioner. And we were very happy to have Craig Hagan, who really represents a new generation of leadership for our state and for our party, winning that seat handily. So that really set the tone for us. The other statewide race, of course, being the congressional seat, although we lost 65 to 35, we feel very, very good about the margin there, because it was by far the best percentage a Republican has received against Byron Dorgan since 1980, when he was first elected. So we felt good about all of those things. The other thing, of course, being the legislature maintaining a strong majority in the State House of Representatives with the 58-48 majority, and we really, to this point, don't know whether we're going to reach our goal or not in the state Senate, but we feel very good about the 26-26 tie. Coming from being 11 members behind the majority party to an even 26-26 was very, very favorable for us, and we're very pleased by that result.
We'll ask Eric Kautzman the same question. What do you think went right for the Democrats in this election?
Well, I guess I would point to the state Senate right away. We were under a horrendous attack by the Republicans across the state, and I really think, considering we had 18 seats up, that we actually came through this pretty well. It was basically a 50-50 deal, both in the Senate and the House. We both sides lost 10 incumbents, and I think, considering the attacks that our incumbents were under, that we actually did pretty good. Of course, Byron Dorgan on the statewide scene did win yet once again. He made a very good showing, and I think that was something we can look to. And I think both Floyd and Buckshot ran very good races and did the best job they can. I guess I would simply look at the races and say, under the attack that they were under, the state Senate and the House, we did pretty good. We did pick up seats in the House, and I think we'll probably, with luck with us, maintain that Senate majority.
Well, what do you think happened in the Senate? You did go from 33-20 majority to right now a split. What do you think happened in the Senate to cause you to lose that majority right now?
Well, mostly, I think there was a statistical disadvantage on our side, I think, basically, is what we were under. We had 18 seats up, the Republicans had 9 up, and I think when you look at what happened, up to this point, they've won. They won 14. We won 13, and I think it was a 50-50 tie, basically.
Let me jump in here. This is Tim Roby with the Forum. Eric, you used the word horrendous attack. Let's cut to the chase right now, man. Okay. We talking negative attack? Are we? What kind of a campaign did we have here now? And maybe specify what you meant by horrendous attack.
Well, I think there was a lot of money spent, and I think what happened is we brought legislative campaigns into a new age, really. There was a lot of television used, a lot of radio used. Our folks had not planned for the type of budget that they needed to run that type of race. And the Republicans used TV very successfly, and I think we were less prepared. Our candidates did not raise the type of money needed to stop an attack like that.
Did the Republicans mount a negative campaign in your estimation?
I think in some instances, sure, you could say that. I think a lot of facts were used, and basically they ran against records in most cases, but there was some negative, I think in some cases unfair campaigning used. I think that's true.
Kevin, any comment there?
Well, only that Eric's right in that we did use a lot of facts. We were very aggressive in attacking the records of the Democrat incumbents, no question about that. But at the same time, the issues were very upfront. We named our issues several months before the election, and we stuck with them. Those issues being taxes, being jobs, and being drugs. And we knew that the Democrat incumbents were all vulnerable, or many of them anyway, were vulnerable on all of those subjects. Of course, in the eastern part of the state, those issues were a little bit different in the sense that we had to focus more on mismanagement of the Democrats versus the taxes, but we didn't see a lot of switch in the eastern part of the state either. One thing I might say is that we understood clearly going in that we were dealing with a number of Democrat incumbents who were on the wrong side of the issues for their part of the state. And we focused on that and went after it. The other thing that we felt good about, I guess you could say, is that the Democrats were saddled with a governor who's in the middle of his second term. And traditionally that doesn't go well for the party that's in the governor's seat. And this year was no exception. In fact, it was probably a stronger rule this year than usual because we're dealing with a governor whose negatives were over 50% and well over 50% in most of the state, especially those areas that we targeted.
You mentioned though that the Democrats ended up on the wrong side of the issue in your estimation. I'm assuming we're talking taxes, especially in the Southwest.
Especially, yes.
But didn't Republicans vote for taxes in 1989 also?
Well, Republicans, a number of Republicans did, and the thing that we looked at very closely, of course, were where those Republicans lived and who they represented. And, the Democrats used a radio ad saying that 2/3 of the Republican legislators voted for 2 of the 3 tax increases. The fact of the matter is, you take away Cass County, where there are 16 of the 21 of the legislators are Republicans. You take away Grand Forks County, where the majority of the legislators are Republicans, and you go right down to Richland County, and you go into the northeast part of the state. You take away those numbers, and pretty soon you don't have very many Republicans voting for tax increases anymore, where they shouldn't be voting for them. And the fact of the matter was that most of the incumbents that voted for tax increases on the Democrat side happened to live on the wrong side of the river. And
can I answer that, Tim?
Sure.
I guess the way I would look at that is, the facts were laid out, and in many cases the Republicans painted the Democrats as the party, period. Regardless of where they were, they painted them as the party of tax and spend. I don't believe that's true. I think that the Republicans were just as much on the tax and spend bandwagon in any instance. But I think when you look at what they were able to do, they simply took, in many cases, one side of a certain issue, and we were not able to defend ourselves on that issue. For instance, in the local race, Gene Hilken, radio commercial. Gene Hilken voted for 16 taxes. Wow, that apparently worked. Well, people legislators could vote for for hundreds of taxes over Gene's 12 years in the legislature. He could have voted for hundreds of taxes, and we didn't really defend ourselves in that case.
Would you see that as a negative attack then, I guess, or was it factual, or is that some of the discussion that it may be factual, but it sure wasn't appropriate?
Well, and the same thing, regarding the drug bill. Many Democrats were under a drug bill attack because they didn't vote for one particular drug bill. There were several drug bills introduced in the legislature, and what I would simply say is that that's simply a part of the record, and I would call that not telling the complete truth in this instance.
Well, let me follow up a little bit about the tax issue. And Eric, it could be, and there was my perception that maybe the Republicans got out of the blocks a little bit quicker regarding the issue of taxation. They already had the ads running, I guess, in early October in some of the legislative races saying, did you know that so-and-so voted for new taxes? It's time for a change. We've got these other candidates who are for no new taxes, that type of thing. Did you think the Democrats were maybe a little slow on the uptake in responding to that?
I certainly think that we could have done a better job of responding to it. If you take races, some races where our people were attacked and they attacked back, like Larry Schoenwald up in Minot, you saw that he was able to nullify those attacks, and I think had we done that some more in more races, we would have been better off. What I look at with a lot of these races is that these guys that were that were under attack are nice folks, and they really had a hard time personally not running on their own good points, or they didn't want to attack, and they didn't want to launch a negative campaign, and sometimes it's hard when you have to deal with a situation like that where people are getting attacked and they don't want to attack back because they don't believe that's right.
Now again, we're talking a lot about attacks, and Kevin, you were going to say something?
Well, I wanted to, one thing with regard to the Hilken radio ad, the 16 tax increases that Gene Hilken voted for weren't in his 12-year career. They were since he was last elected, going back to the special session in 1986. And so, I think he voted for about 16 of about 19 ads as opposed to 16 out of 100. And so I just wanted to set that record straight, because certainly, a guy over a 12-year career has to vote for some things and not vote for some things. But, this was not a negative campaign. We simply stated the facts, and as I said earlier, we put him up front long before the campaign. So there were no surprises sprung on anybody.
I am going to beg to differ here in one race, right here in Bismarck. The District 53 Senate race, at one point a radio ad was aired that used the words, we don't want, I think Tomac is a rodeo clown.
Mm-hmm.
We don't, and the ad said, we are Republicans. I'm assuming it's a Republican ad. It didn't say that, but we don't want someone clowning around in the legislature.
Mm-hmm.
That is an accurate assumption of, or an accurate detail
That's
of an
correct.
ad, right?
That's correct.
How can that not be negative?
Well, first of all, you've got to understand that we were responding to something that, besides his voting record, the fact that he's a rodeo clown we saw that playing to his favor, and we needed to nullify that. One of the things that Steve Tomac has done effectively is used his position as a rodeo clown as an advantage in the legislature and in his races. We had a lot of...
How so?
Okay, I'll give you one very good example. Here we are in the heat of a campaign just a couple of weeks before the election, and the biggest rodeo in the upper Midwest is taking place in Bismarck, right in the middle of his market, if you will. And we knew of his tradition of using that platform to beat up on Republicans. He tells countless Republican jokes while he's acting as a rodeo clown and bolsters his own campaign. At the same time, he had it rigged so that he was introduced as Senator Steve Tomac many times throughout the course of this 3 or 4 day rodeo. And so throughout the course of that run, we felt that we needed to make that, what he has turned into a positive, somewhat into a negative, at least nullify it. So we did have a strategic reason for doing that.
Then he wins in a close race, and then is it safe to say that he got out the rodeo vote and you didn't?
Well,
I don't buy that. I don't really.
Well, I don't know, Tim. We make all these strategic decisions based on what we see happening, what we need to do. We might have lost by 300 votes had we not run that ad. I don't know. Steve Tomac is interesting person. He's a personality. Before he even becomes a legislator, he's a personality. It's kind of like, running against Ronald Reagan, because you're running against somebody that's already established himself in the community. Now you look at Steve, and he's a celebrity, if you will, and so we just needed to do what we needed to do to try and nullify that.
In response to that, I would say two things. First of all, I would doubt whether many of Steve's constituents are at those parties listening to him, and I don't think that's an effective way to get to your constituents. And second of all, I would consider that a personal attack, regardless of whether or not it is negative. Steve Tomac is clowning around in the legislature is a personal attack, and I really find it hard, for whatever reason you would like to do that. I really have a hard time dealing with that.
Well, I might again remind the panel and the listeners that during the 1989 legislative session, Steve Tomac missed 45 legislative votes as a rodeo clown on the Pat Sajak show, which is now defunct, and that is another issue that. He was there because he is a rodeo clown. He missed his votes in the legislature because he's a rodeo clown. And, we strategically thought that we needed to nullify that.
I appreciate Daryl supplying Kevin with that information. That was really nice of you, Daryl. And I would say, there you go. That is an issue, and that is something that you could bring up, and it might be a negative issue against another candidate, but it's not a personal attack.
Well, we could talk about negative campaigning probably for the entire show. If you don't mind, David, I'd like to ask one question, maybe switch gears a little.
Please do.
Both sides lost some heavy-hitting incumbents. I guess I'll ask both of you the same question. Assess your incumbent loss. From the Democrats, I guess I'd have to look at Rick Maxner, obviously, a party leader. Republicans lose their assistant leader in the Senate, and with Todd. So could you both give us a view of how you see this incumbent losses?
Well, I guess I would look at it. Rick was an excellent leader and really very knowledgeable. Knew what was going on, and very knowledgeable in tax issues and environmental issues. Actually,
why did he lose?
Well, I think Rick went under another hard-hitting attack. And I'm not sure if what kind of a response that Rick had going down there, but it was particularly effective down in that area, and it's hard to say. It's hard to say why someone lost in general. He was under a great attack, and apparently we were not able to get our people out to vote in as great a numbers as we wanted out there.
Let me stay with. If I can, with Eric, just a quick second. You also lost 3 other incumbents in the Senate, which I guess that's a big focus. What's your feeling there? Some of them were some pretty good players.
Yeah, some of them were, and they're really good people. Ben Axman, Jerry Meyer, and Gene Hilken were I think good legislators, and they did represent their people well in all aspects of the legislature. And those are sad losses to take. However, we take those losses, and we'll move on from there. We also did pick up some seats in the House, and we'll move on to that.
Kevin, what's your feeling on the incumbent situation?
Well, again, with regard, of course, to Senator Maxner's loss, Eric is right. I think he found himself again. I know he found himself on the wrong side of too many issues, but it was in his case, it was bigger than that because he really couldn't get out from under it. Not because he voted wrong, but because he led the charge. And for whatever reason, Rick Maxner became very up front, or played a leading role in carrying the ball for some things for the Sinner administration, for Bill Highgard, that I never understood. There were many times when I'd read about Rick Maxner in a paper, and I'd sit and I'd scratch my head and I'd think, why is he doing this to himself? Like, introducing a bill to make it 4 times as difficult or 3 times as difficult to refer a measure when clearly that's not what his constituents wanted. And I think you saw a number of Democrat incumbents in the Senate get caught up in representing their party instead of representing their constituents. And they just left themselves very vulnerable in that case. On the House side, of course, again, we suffered some there the way the Democrats did in the Senate, and that we, of course, being a majority in the House, had more of our people up for re-election than they had of theirs. And so statistically, right away, you're at somewhat of a disadvantage. The House has always been volatile. When you run every 2 years, that's the way it is.
How do you see the Art Todd loss?
Art Todd ran up against a very popular member of the House. It was really a case where two incumbents were running against each other, if you will. They had the same constituency. They both had high name recognition. And I tell you what, they had very similar voting records as well. So it was a very difficult race to draw a difference between the two candidates. And we were out-organized in that district. We do not have the identification process down to the science that we should have it in that district, and so we just weren't able to get our people out to the polls.
In regard to the Rick Maxner representing the party, I'd just like to clarify that statement and say that I think what Rick was doing was what he believed that the people out there wanted, and I really have a hard time saying that people wanting to change the number in order to allow a referral is a party issue. I think there were a lot of Republicans out there that were supporting that as well.
Well, while we have a few minutes, and we only have a few minutes left, unfortunately, in the discussion today, I'd like to take a look at the District 20 Senate race. Of course, that's going to be that's going to be very interesting. Of course, with a 26-26 split, the way it stands right now, that is barring any major things that may happen in canvassing boards. What kind of effort is going to be put into the District 20 race? And I'd like to ask both Kevin Kramer and Eric Kautzman what kind of effort their parties are going to put in District 20.
Well, there's been a lot of speculation and, of course, a lot of attention drawn to it. I know that for our candidate, Eileen Larson, she didn't, I don't think, dream in her wildest dreams that she was going to become the focus of a statewide, media questioning and scrutiny. But obviously, there'll be a great effort. Financially, we're tapped out. I don't know about the Democrats. We didn't go in debt, but I'll tell you what, we're tapped out. And I would guess that you're going to see a lot of Washington, D.C. Political Action Committee money coming in through Congressman Dorgan and Senator Conrad and probably the governor. And we're anticipating that. We're concerned about that. We know we're not going to be able to match them dollar for dollar. We just don't have that kind of accessibility to those kind of finances. So we're going to be concentrating on a very grassroots campaign where Eileen is going to be very aggressively going door to door, asking people one-on-one for their vote. Beyond that, we just don't have a lot of plans because we just frankly don't have the resources to do it.
Eric, same question for you.
Thanks, Kevin, for giving my answer. I appreciate that. The only thing different between what we're going to do in that district and what Kevin has said the Republicans are going to do in that district is simply that we did go into debt fighting off these Republican attacks, and it's a serious debt. And we have a lot of work that we have to do simply recovering that type of money. Unfortunately, we don't have the ability through Byron and Kent and others to bring in millions of dollars of PAC money to run a race in District 20, and therefore we're counting on the people out in the district to do the voter contact and get out our Democratic vote.
I have one comment that I can throw at as a question, but as a statement also. If there is a lot of statewide attention and a lot of help from the Republicans and the Democrats from the state party, aren't you in essence telling the voters in Traill County that they don't have a clue what's going on in the first place, and boy, you need our state help to get elected, and the same with these candidates. I would think that to a certain degree, as a candidate, I would resent all of a sudden this statewide attention because there's going to be some, but all of a sudden the focus is there and everyone's saying money, money, money. Is that going to be a problem?
Well, go ahead.
Well, from our standpoint, we don't do anything for a candidate that a candidate doesn't want to do. It's back to the negative campaign issue and hitting back. We won't negatively campaign. We just won't do anything for a candidate unless they want it done. Up in Grand Forks, I found out there's a Monday flyer the Monday before the election put in the paper, and the candidates didn't know that it was going to be put in by the Republicans. We just simply won't do that. If Elroy Lindis would like our help, we are glad to give Elroy our help, and the kind of help that we're going to give him is help identifying and getting his supporters out to vote.
I would agree, Tim, with your assessment. And you need to be very sensitive. First of all, the people of North Dakota are very sophisticated in politics, and they've proven that. They've proven that in special elections, referral elections, and certainly in general elections. They know the issues, and they're not going to be fooled by some congressman or senator that comes in and says that Elroy's a wonderful guy and I wish you'd support him because we really need him. They're not going to buy into that. Now, some figures may come in and help raise the visibility of the campaign, maybe raise a little bit of money, and I don't see anything wrong with that. But I agree with you, Tim. I just don't think that the voters in a district are going to take very kindly to a lot of outside influence.
Okay, we just have a couple of minutes left, and I'll ask this question, and you may not want to answer this, but I'll ask. Coming out of the 1990 elections and the 1990 races, and I know you have the District 20 race to worry about, where are both parties at financially? Very briefly, tell me. Kevin.
Well, we pride ourselves, I guess, on being financially responsible, and we're in a position right now where we have, I would have to go put out a scale to find out just exactly how close to even money we're at, but we did not inquire in any debt whatsoever, and we might even have $1 or $2 left over, but we don't have 100, I can tell you that.
Eric, same thing?
Well, I really wish we could. I believe that we are also financially very responsible, and I have a hard time believing that the Republicans could come out of this attack without outside money and at even money. It just amazes me how much money was spent on these legislative races and how much TV time they were using. I would say we're going to have to work hard to try and recover our debt, and we're going to do that. And then we'll get on to District 20.
All right, I'd like to thank Eric Kautzman, the Executive Director of the North Dakota Democratic NPL Party, Kevin Kramer, the Executive Director of the North Dakota Republican Party, and Tim Roby, Political Correspondent and Political Bureau Chief for the Forum of Fargo-Moorhead.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And this is the Prairie Weekly on Prairie Public Radio. I'm Dave Thompson. Enjoy your weekend.